This was my entire summer. Summer's over. Hello everyone, my name's B. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about my stuff that I'm just personally into. If you didn't know, I do have a main channel called Miss B Hanley where I do videos for my students and their parents and other teachers and my community. So if you are interested in any of that stuff, please go ahead and check it out, and you can subscribe over on that other channel. But if you like this, you should definitely subscribe to this channel because this is where I just talk about like stuff I'm reading. So I'm a teacher and it's summer. Actually, I'm a teacher and it's the end of summer, which means that I'm going back to my full-time job, which is teaching kids. I'm excited. Look, I had a great summer. I was able to just spend time with my family and recoup and relax. I had a great summer. I can't complain. No, I didn't really travel anywhere or go anywhere fantastic. We did go to the beach for a day. We did go to the pool. I did read a ton and watch a ton of movies and TV. So, I'm just gonna talk about it and tell you just all the things that I read and watched and did this summer and give you a couple of stats as well. If you are subscribed to this channel and you've been watching my videos, I'm doing like a monthly wrap up. So I'm not gonna go into too much depth into what I read in June, but I did read so much more in July, like a lot more in July. I felt like July was a really good reading month. So first thing we're gonna talk about the last book that I read in July first, because number one, it's my most favorite book that I read this summer, this month, definitely, and potentially this summer. I think is probably my top book of the summer. And it might surprise you, but it is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I started reading Babel on audio, listening to it on audio through Spotify. You get some hours free with premium. So it's not really free, but you get audiobook listening hours if you have a premium subscription with Spotify. So I did, and I had already listened to 3 Body Problem in June. So I'd already used up some of my hours for this month, but I thought, I'll listen to it slowly, and when it comes time for my hours to renew, I'll just wait, like take a break. I didn't realize that I would want to read this book so desperately. I was so into this book. I cannot even describe how I looked forward to my 5 a.m. wake up and walk just to listen to this book. I loved it. I loved every bit of it. It was a 6 out of 5 stars for me. My review on Goodreads and Fable is, honestly, I'm so proud of it. This book did more for me than 7 books, 8 movies, and a theme park franchise ever did. This is what I needed as a reformed Harry Potter fan. This is everything. The reason why I'm bringing this up first, let me go back to my story. So I'm listening to Babel, and I get to a point where I'm like, I need to read this book. Like, I need to finish it. And I use up all my hours before they renew. And it literally, when this happened, it ruined my day for like 2 full days. I was just having an awful day on both of those days, and I blame it specifically on the fact that I couldn't listen to this book. So I'm like dying. And at one point I said, I'm gonna go to the bookstore, which is a bad idea already because I've told myself that I'm not buying any more books this year. But I did go to the bookstore just to be around books. Does anybody else do that? Anybody else just go to the bookstore just to like be around more books? Just like physically like encompass yourself around books? Well, I did that. I did that. I went to the bookstore just so I could be around books. And I found a copy of Babel. And I picked it up and I was like, I could buy this. I could spend the 20 bucks that it costs to get the paperback and finish it. Because I did order it at the library and the hold hadn't come up yet. I even read some of it while I was in the bookstore, but I ultimately decided not to buy it. I'm trying to save money. I got a kid now and I gotta save money. I've already spent so much on books. So I go to the library after going to the bookstore, and I swear to you, the book gods heard my prayer, and there it was, waiting for me at the library. I couldn't describe the amount of joy that I had when I found Babel. I had so much joy that I actually checked out 2 more books from the library because I was just like, I love you, library. And I just checked out books. I probably won't read them before they're due. I feel good about checking them out. My library is being supported, and I got to read the book that I was just craving to finish. Babel is set in an alternate history of Britain, specifically Oxford, where in Oxford there is a college that is solely dedicated to translation. And the main character, his name is Robin. He comes from Canton, and a man, he's not entirely sure who this man is or how he knows about Robin, but he takes him back to England with him and raises him in a way where he studies languages, Latin, Greek, English, and a whole bunch of different other languages. What he's doing is he's prepping him to go to Oxford to study at this college. And the college is called Babel. Babel has this magical technology where they make silver bars and write words on them, and the bars will do something related to that translation of those words. So for example, trains can run more efficiently, cars, people's gardens can, produce more fruit, more flowers, whatever they want them to do. And so basically the British Empire has this school at Oxford that's allowing them to distribute and use this as an economic resource that has this kind of magical ability. And so Robin's whole goal is to study at Babel, learn how this silver working magic works, and basically just become like a fellow and like hopefully rise to the occasion of a professor so he can continue to teach and learn. Like that's his whole thing, is he just loves learning languages and he just wants to like be at Oxford. It's like it's his dream. But when he gets there, he finds out that there's a secret society that is working against Babel and kind of exposing Babel as this tool for the British Empire's colonization of the world. And so he is conflicted about getting involved with this secret society, and the whole book is like his journey through his time at Babel, as well as him kind of getting the inner workings of this secret society. So I love this book. I love this book so much. And this is where I want to get into this conversation, because this book is apparently controversial. I guess some people didn't like it, and that's fine. I've seen some criticisms where I'm like, okay, it kind of makes sense. I don't agree with the criticisms, but I can see where someone would be like, okay, like I didn't like it because the first half was so dull, right? They're just at school. For me though, that whole vibe of like going to Oxford to study and hanging out like you're in college and just reading books, that is a good chunk of this book. I'd say probably 60% of this book is them just hanging out at Oxford, studying languages and reading books. And honestly, that was everything to me. I loved it. I didn't matter. She could have made it 100 pages longer and I would have read it. Where the main character, where Robin goes and sits and he's just like walking around the town. He's just like, it's so magical, and like magical in like, not like the actual magic that they have in the universe, but just like the idea of being able to read and translate and have these like cohorts that you are connected with and you're sharing ideas and you're discussing. Like I got that. That clicked for me. I understand where some people it might not click for. Some people might be reading this and they're like, I want an epic fantasy where there's action and there's adventure, or I want a dark academia where there's mystery and like, intrigue. And that has all of this. There is all of this in here. Because about 60 to 75% after you get to like you get into some dark, crazy stuff. And it's awesome, in my opinion. This is a tragedy. This story is not a happy story, okay? It's like, look at the cover. So like I was fully prepared for there to be real stakes. To me, it just felt like that when those characters died, I was like, okay, this book is real. This book is real stakes. And it worked for me. It worked for me on so many levels I can't even describe. Some people didn't like that. which again is another criticism I'm okay with. The only criticism I'm not okay with when people give criticisms about this book is I saw a particularly popular review online of someone saying, I was really uncomfortable, that this is them saying this, I was really uncomfortable reading this book where every white person is evil.
Hi, please ignore the messy house behind me. I was editing this video and I went back and read some of the reviews that I originally saw when I finished reading Babel, and I realized that a lot of the things I was trying to address in this rant that I made did not fully address the criticisms that some people were actually bringing up about this book. So, all I'm going to say is if you have really strong opinions about this book, please leave some thoughts down in the comments. I really loved it, but I can understand why other people might not. And I'd still love to have a conversation with you. That being said, I'm not here to make incendiary content or rage bait people into having a conversation with me about the nuances of dark academia and fantasy. So, if you want to share some thoughts, leave them down in the comments. If not, enjoy the rest of the video. Thanks.
If you hated this book, it's fine. I'm not mad at you. But, you know, you're wrong. Okay? I'm gonna buy this book when I get money to buy, maybe for my birthday or for Christmas or something. I will buy this book and I will put this on my shelf because I love this book. I want to read it again. I really, really want to read it again. I loved every single bit of it. R.F. Kuang, you've sold me. I have not read The Poppy War and I have not read Yellowface. I kind of want to read Yellowface. I'm a little bit iffy about Poppy War. And honestly, the way things are going right now, I'm trying to try out a whole bunch of different kinds of authors. Like, I'm not trying to stick to just one author. But I think R.F. Kuang is going to be one of those authors that I do try to go into their backlist and see if there's other books that I like. Love this book. I love this book. If you can handle like what I just talked about, like if you heard my review and my anti-criticisms, if you can like handle that, you know, being uncomfortable with how white people are depicted, then you should read this book. And you like books and you like reading, you like language. She did a great job, okay? Like, she was writing for a specific type of reader, and I am that specific type of reader. Anyway, this was the last book that I read in July. This will probably be the last book that I read this summer. School starts next week. School is 1.5 full-time job. How do you say that? A full and a half-time job? Yeah, it's a full and a half-time job teaching. So, and I have a kid. So I don't know if I'm gonna get to read like another book like this. I hope so, but it might slow down. I'm gonna be honest with myself, it might slow down. Oh, let's talk about the musicals that I was able to finish in July. I talked about the 2 musicals that I read in June, but I read 4, 1, 2, 3. I actually read 5 musicals in July, mainly because I got to the middle of July and I realized that I had 8 musicals left to read and I hadn't started any of them. So I still have 3 left to get through, which I've got a couple more days left of before school starts. So I'm thinking I could get through the last 3 musicals that I had, but I did end up reading 5 out of the TBR that I had presented at the start of the summer. So first up is Rent. Rent is an iconic Broadway musical. It's been around since the 90s. It's predominantly about this group of people who are friends living in New York City and dealing with the gentrification of their neighborhood in New York, as well as dealing with the AIDS epidemic. Like, I think the big number from this musical is Seasons of Love. You've heard it many times, I'm sure. 525,600. It's famous. I saw the movie when it came out when I was in high school. Putting this one first, because out of the 5 that I read this month, this actually is my least favorite. And the more that I dig into it, the more I dislike it, which is weird. And I'm gonna, hear me out on this, I'm gonna justify it. Rent doesn't really, it tells the story of these people. And I think the most tragic and story closest to home in this musical is Angel, who is a gay drag queen in New York City, but also dealing with having an AIDS diagnosis. And it's a very tragic story, and they tell her story really well. I've always loved Rent. I've loved the music. I really enjoyed the movie when it came out. But now that I'm older, and now that I'm like reading about it and getting into the lyrics, I dislike it a little bit more than when I was younger. It's to spread awareness about AIDS. It's to talk about, like, you know, how capitalism is, you know, taking the lives of people, you know, who are just trying to make art or trying to live their lives. The more I think about it, the more, like, the ending isn't truly that satisfying. It's not like a very progressive story. I guess at the end, Benny, who is kind of the main villain in the musical, is kind of redeemed or kind of changed. And there are some characters who do go through some changes, but then at the same time, like, do they really? I don't know. The other thing about it is that I have a whole set for my class in my classroom, but this musical is, there's problematic stuff on every page. You know, this is probably the most explicit, vulgar, obscene, profane, I hate using all those words, I'm just gonna say explicit, is the most explicit musical on my shelf in my classroom. While it is iconic, and it is, I think, an important musical to know about the history of musical theater, I don't know if it's really that good. So I'm still debating about it. I have some way better musicals that I want to do studies with my students for. So I may have this be an independent project for my advanced students, but I'm still not sure. I'm still kind of like on the fence about using this as a part of our curriculum. The other musicals, again, we're going in reverse order of my favorite. So I think next favorite is gonna be, this one's tough because they're all really good, is Hairspray. I just finished this one right at the end of July, and I mentioned watching the movie at the end of the school year in May, and I love this. I love this musical. It's definitely a comedy. It's about a young girl who lives in Baltimore who is trying out for this dance television show and then trying to become Miss Hairspray. She's described as pleasantly plump, but she's fat, and everybody recognizes this about her and talks about it on the stage, but she's like undeterred, right? She's like, well, I can still dance, and she does, and it just is such a great positive depiction of fat people, in my opinion, especially for the time period that this was originally produced. There are some, I'd say a handful of very questionable things that are mentioned in the musical. I think there is quite a few like references, allusions to sex. There is obviously a whole bunch of talk about the civil rights movement because that's when this musical is set. Tracy, the main character, she believes in integration, and she makes that known to everybody in the musical, especially when she's auditioning for the TV show. The TV show, the Corny Collins show that she is auditioning for, has a day called Negro Day, which is the term that is used in the musical because that was the term that they used back in the 1960s. And Tracy thinks that Black and white people should be able to dance together on television. And it's a pretty radical stance for the 1960s, and you can kind of see that conversation happen with some of the characters. I think this would be actually pretty great to teach with students, especially when it comes to like history and understanding what happened. It's a light retelling, I think, of that particular time period. There is not a lot of discussion about police brutality or wrongful imprisonment of Black people. It is a comedy still, so they do have to make a lot of it really lighthearted, and they do. And there's a happy ending, so like, you know, racism is solved at the end. It's still a great musical, and I think the elements that I would pull out of this to really teach to theater students would be the elements of comedy that are presented in this, because the characters can often be caricatures of themselves, and also the discussion around race and integration. So there's a lot to teach with this. I definitely think it would be something I would use in curriculum with my students. Still funny and lighthearted, and I think they're easier conversations to have with this than it would be with like Rent. The next one I'm going to talk about though is In the Heights by Lin-Manuel Miranda. I had never seen In the Heights. I had listened to some songs, but I had never seen it, and I ended up watching it. Fantastic. I really, really loved it. It did not follow the exact timeline of this book, of the original Broadway cast, but I think that the changes that they made in the movie were actually better. I loved it. First of all, the musical, I love it. The music is so good, as you would expect, right? Lin-Manuel Miranda. This is similar to Rent as it takes place in New York City. But instead of this group of friends, it's really just about this community or this neighborhood in New York City called Washington Heights, where a large population of Latin American immigrants have come to, set up their life. And the whole point of the musical is to show that they are from all different countries, Cuba, Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and how they all kind of come together and create this really vibrant community that's trying to keep each other afloat and encourage each other because they all have these dreams that they're chasing. I think I was saying earlier, the movie made some changes that I thought were better than the original Broadway production, and specifically the movement of the song Paciencia y Fe from Act 1 to the end of Act 1 or beginning of Act 2, however you want to decide that in the movie. But moving that song, I think, made that song way more powerful and have such a bigger overarching message. I love the song, and I love the musical. I love everything, but that song in particular as a introduction to the character versus a farewell of the character definitely changes the power of the messaging. It was a really great choice. There's nothing bad I can say about this. I don't have any criticisms. I think the actors in the movie were really good because Lin-Manuel Miranda played the main character on Broadway. He played Usnavi, but in the movie he plays the water guy, Piragua guy, the guy who goes around with the ice, the ice flavored ice. Okay. And oh my goodness. I think that was a particularly interesting casting. The movie I thought was incredibly well produced. The addition of Vanessa's fashion goal or fashion dream was really interesting. I think it just added more to her character. The dancing and the way that it was presented looked so fabulous, so amazing. Those actors are so talented. If you haven't listened to this musical or seen the movie, I think it's on HBO, definitely take a look. I think it's great. I'm gonna be playing this soundtrack probably for the rest of the year. Let's finish up with my last two. And the only reason why these two are my top favorites is because I've read them and seen them before. And also I have a very visceral memory experience with both of these. So first I'm gonna start with Into the Woods. This is the movie tie-in that just came out recently, and I am not gonna talk about the movie tie-in. We're not gonna talk about it, okay? It's not good. Meryl Streep and Emily Blunt, she's also very good in that. But, okay, let me just say this. There's one actor in the movie version of Into the Woods who ruins the entire thing. And I don't think I need to say his name. If you've seen the movie, if you've seen the cast, you know who that one person is. It's the same guy who ruined Cats, the movie, too, okay? Anybody else could have played the baker. Anybody else. Meryl Streep could have played the baker. Okay, anyway, we're done. We're not talking about it. So Into the Woods, I need to tell you about the first time that I saw Into the Woods. I saw Into the Woods when I was in high school. I had a friend who was way more knowledgeable about musical theater than me. She had had much more experience in plays and musicals, and I think her mom, her whole family was involved in the theater. So I came over to her house And she was like, have you ever seen Into the Woods? And I'm like, no. And she's like, let's watch it. And we get through the first act and I was like, oh, it was good. It was really good. It was really cute. It's a cute little musical. And she's like, oh no, it's not over. That's just the first act. And she's like, just wait. Sobbing. I was like, whoa, that's good. That's a good musical. Really, really, really good. Even the first half is normally meant to be like the junior version of this musical. They only do the first half, and then full production houses will do the whole thing. Because the first half is kind of the typical story that we know. Cinderella, Jack and the Beanstalk, Red Riding Hood, and they all kind of collide in the woods because they have their own goals that they're trying to accomplish. And so the first act is them all doing what they want to try and get their wish. And they get their wish at the end of the first act. Second act is what happens after they get their wish. So good. And I'm going to tell you right now that if you saw the Disney version of Into the Woods, erase it from your memory, go online, find the original Broadway cast recording with Bernadette Peters, and you will know the magic of this musical, okay? I watched it again recently just because I read it. Reading it made me feel the original way when I first saw it. Like, it made me feel the feelings when I first saw Into the Woods. And then watching it again, I was like transported right back into my friend's living room, watching her VHS tape of Into the Woods, and it hit so hard. I never will watch the Disney version again just because it's not, no. Go watch the original Broadway cast recording. Go listen to the original Broadway cast. That is how this musical should be listened to and watched and read. Love it. Last. The only reason why this is not getting my favorite book of the summer is because Babel was so good. This is my favorite musical. It's my favorite musical of all time. I can't say that there's another musical I love over this one. And that is Hadestown. I cried. Cried the first time. Cried the second time. I saw it live. I'll never forget that day. It was like the only reason that I was gonna leave my house because my kid was just born. And I really didn't want to leave my house, but I left my house to go see a live production of this musical. Hadestown is a retelling of the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, set in a like coal mining dust bowl town, I guess that's what you would say. The music is so incredible. Anais Mitchell she's my queen. I want to be her. The thing about this particular book of the lyrics, in between, after each song, Anais has written her notes on how the song was like developed from her first writing it to their different productions, finally onto Broadway. And I think the most interesting thing, this is why I'm gonna read this with my students, okay? The most interesting thing is that you really get to see how musicals are made, how a group of people can come together, because it's not just Anais Mitchell. She credits her dramaturgy team, she credits her songwriting, her music team. She's like talking to a whole collaboration of group of people to make this. So you really get a sense of how each song has been developed, and also you get a peek into how each production, until the final original Broadway cast production, how it kind of changes and how the audience influences the changes that they made. That's the most fascinating thing to me about this book and about her notes. And that's what I would want to talk about with students, not just the music. The music is so incredible, like so good. The song that made me cry, if you really want to know, it's not the one that you think. It's Why We Build the Wall. If you have never listened to that song, it's slow and you're gonna be like, wait a minute, why does she care so much about this song? But then when you get to the end, brilliant. Pure brilliance. The whole thing is so good and brilliant. All right, just go watch it, go read it, go listen to it. It's so good. It's so good, it will change your life. That's all I'm gonna say about this. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about what I like, all the stuff that I read besides those things that I just showed you. I'm gonna go through these kind of quickly because some of these I've already done a review about for like the last video that I did. I reviewed some of these. Really quick, go through the rest of these. I finished and read Dark Matter. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. There were some things that I didn't quite like about it. It wasn't my favorite multiverse book, but it wasn't bad. It was pretty good. I DNF'd Summer Ever After. I started reading this on Kindle and I really just did not vibe with the characters, the whole story. I was done. I read Cult of the Lamb, the first issue. So Cult of the Lamb is a video game. And I love the video game. It's so much fun and so cute. You are a sacrificial lamb who has been resurrected by an old god to start a cult. And that's what the video game's about. And so issue number 1 is basically the backstory. It's kind of redundant if you've played the game. I would love to see more comics come out for this game because I think it's very cute. But if it just follows the video game, I don't know if I would read it. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Huge surprise for my Hates Reads video. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I hated reading the first 90%, but it was something that I didn't absolutely hate. I really did enjoy it. The movie looks like it's gonna be good. I definitely will probably check it out. I don't go to the movies anymore, so I haven't seen Deadpool. But maybe when it comes to streaming, I'll watch it. I DNF'd Jump Rope Girl. I did read probably like 60 or 70% of it. I talked about it in my Hate Reads video. Wasn't for me. I finished Shoals, which again was in my Hate Reads video. Another surprise. Another huge surprise. This one I gave 5 out of 5 stars because I was hooked from page 1. I'm still very anxious to read the sequel. I loved it. I highly recommend it. It is a self-pub. If you go check this out on Amazon, go buy it, go read it, review it, spread the word. This is good. Then the last book I read this month was The Magicians, The New Class, which is a graphic novel series based on The Magicians by Lev Grossman. The graphic novel series is written by Lila Sturgis, and the first trade is the first 5 issues of this new series. I never read The Magicians trilogy. I wanted to. I DNF'd the first one because I got bored, but I don't know if I go back now if I would really enjoy it. I don't know. I've tried to go back and I just haven't really found the time or the energy to do it. Like I said, I never read the trilogy. I watched the show though. I loved The Magicians show all the way till the end. I thought the ending was actually pretty satisfying. I don't think I actually watched past, wait a minute. I think there's one season I didn't watch. I think I stopped watching it after like season 5 or season 6. I'm not sure. But I did enjoy the show and I was really excited to read the graphic novel. I really enjoyed the graphic novel. There were some things I didn't quite get because it seems like some of the magic is not right. The New Class is set in the world of the magicians of break bills. But in the New Class, they have this opportunity where they bring in hedge witches who are witches who don't study at break bills. They study magic basically on their own. And they bring a group of hedge witches over to break bills to study. And the real purpose behind doing this is to teach them battle magic. And the way that they portray them doing battle magic is so not how it's portrayed in the TV show, at the very least. In the TV show, they make a huge deal about how battle magic is incredibly hard to master, and the characters have to actually like literally bottle their emotions, like take their emotions out of them and bottle them up so that they can do battle magic properly. And I feel like in the graphic novel, they just completely forget about that. Like they just like, oh no, it's just easy for them now because they're so smart and good. And it's like, okay, but that was the only discrepancy that I saw. I don't know. I did really enjoy the inclusion of queer characters. I thought that was a really cool introduction. Personally, in my perspective, I don't know if it's like all that accurate, but I did like the inclusion of that and the portrayal of them. I thought was pretty respectful and pretty realistic. That's my perspective, personally. I did like that though. I did like that they included that in the New Class. Okay, so that's what I read. And I talked a little bit about what I watched. I didn't really watch a lot in July. Other than the musicals that I just talked about, there weren't other things that I watched a lot of. I just watched stuff here and there or rewatched stuff that I really loved. But I did finish Three Body Problem on Netflix. The first season is kind of cool. I'm hoping that the next season is, I don't know, a little bit more interesting. And I'm not saying interesting. I just, having read the book and then watching the show, I don't know, I didn't get the same feeling. Let me just say that. I didn't get the same feeling from the book to the show. I thought the book was a little bit more interesting because of the characters that it was presented from, but the show was not bad. They just added so many more characters and then took a character from the book and like separated him into two other characters. So it was just kind of weird. It was just a little kind of off-putting for me. But I'll watch the second season when it comes out, definitely. I also kind of watched Godzilla Minus One. I'd heard really, really great things about it. And I did like it, the part that I saw, but then about 50% through I fell asleep. And that's my bad. So, I do want to go back and finish it because I did like it, but I fell asleep. I'm so sorry, Godzilla Minus One. And I think I watched more than I'm like thinking that I did. I think I got pretty close to the end, but I can't remember. So now I need to go rewatch it. Anyway, those are the things that I watched. And I don't know if I should talk about this last thing. I feel like I need to. Let me take a sip of water first because this might be another hour long. I might be splitting this into two videos. The last thing I do want to talk about, because I am a fan of Marvel, and I have some thoughts about the Doctor Doom announcement. Honestly, I'm okay with it. I'm really I like it. I think it's a good idea. For people who are asking why Robert Downey Jr. is coming back to be Doctor Doom, I think it could make sense. I think, the way that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is moving, the storyline, it kind of seems like they want to do a multiverse. Maybe there's a multiverse, maybe there's a universe where Tony Stark became Doctor Doom, and that's how the Fantastic Four fit into this. It's interesting. I'm actually intrigued, and it does make sense why they're bringing him back. They want to get hype for this. They want to get people talking, especially since they have kind of fumbled the bag a little bit with their announcements of the movies and content that they want to put out, and then working it back and being like, no, we're just kidding. We're doing something completely different. It makes sense why they're changing it, not just with the news about Jonathan Majors, but also with the news that they don't think they can put out as much as they were anticipating they could put out. And so I feel like this change is a way to be like, we know we fumbled and we're gonna try and make it right. And with RDJ, yeah, he's older and he did say he wasn't gonna come back, but he still needs money, and I think he still enjoys doing these movies. At least in the interviews that I have seen of him talking about the Marvel films, he seems to have a very special relationship with the characters, and I think he really enjoys portraying characters in this world and doing stuff with Marvel. And I think people are going to be interested and want to see this. I think that this is going to be something that draws people in. I think former fans who left and are now coming back, I think it's going to bring some of those people back. But that's just my opinion. If you have a different opinion, share it, put it in the comments. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm totally off base here. But the other news that I want to talk about is the video that I made a couple weeks ago about Neil Gaiman. Since putting out that video, I have watched several other videos about this whole story. First and foremost, I want to mention that the podcast, after kind of reviewing the information that they gave, as well as some other commentators' opinions about it, it's quite obvious that the podcast has done something really unethical and kind of shady. I mentioned it in my video, but from what I can tell from what other people are talking about and saying, the podcast is not doing these women justice with their stories. And the way that they're presenting it does seem very sensational and kind of like a cash grab. And if you have listened to it, you might know what I'm talking about here with the way that they've kind of structured the information. Look, this is gonna keep coming out. Like, people are gonna keep talking about this. My only hope, my biggest hope, is that all sides do get presented properly, that justice is served, that these women can be respected for coming forward with their stories, and that there is some accountability that takes place. That's my biggest hope. And if we do hear more about this, I'll definitely talk about it if I can. But I just wanted to say, if you have joined my channel from that video, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know how much more book news I'm gonna talk about on this channel, but thank you for joining us. Thank you for subscribing. Please join the discussion. If you have thoughts about anything that I talked about, leave a comment down below. I'd love to talk to you about it. I'd love to get your thoughts on all the things. Look at this. All of this was on my shelf that I hadn't read it. And now I read so much. I'm so proud of myself. I really wanted to start clearing out these shelves, and I did. Accomplished, mission accomplished. This is a great moment. Okay, that's gonna be it for today. I am already past the time I need for this video. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please subscribe, comment, join the discussion, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.